The hat's wonderful. Is the hat a problem for us?
The hat's
No,
not
no,
a
no,
problem
no,
for
no,
me, as
shouldn't.
long as it's not-
No, any good filmmaker or a video maker should be able to go around that problem.
I think so.
I agree.
In the between 1960 and 70, I ran Filmmakers Cinematheque and Filmmakers Cooperative, and those were very busy places for the 60s New York art scene, and that of course included filmmakers and musicians and painters, etc. And and that's where I met everybody, that's including Lou Reed. It was at Park, main center of the activity was 414 Park Avenue South, corner of 28th Street, which was my loft, and everybody, every evening, everybody was there, from Salvador Dali to Andy Warhol to just name anybody. It was a very busy, exciting period. The theater itself was sort of one step down on the level down, and there were about 200 and some seats, and it was practically always filled. It was, I couldn't do it, get a 200-seat theater full today for something like that. But maybe it was, when something just comes into existence and everybody is excited about it, it was very often, the place was full and everybody was excited. But the films, I do not exactly recall to what films Velvet Underground or Plastic Inevitables, played, but I would say, that I know that included my own films that, one would not even suspect, like a film, The Brig, but she played, Barbara Rubin projected them all with no sound. You could not hear the sound of the film, only the music. So it was a lot of superimpositions. It was just a huge collage and montage of images with the sound in the background. But there was this energy in the music that I wrote, I think, in the Village Voice, that it was not like anything else. Like you could feel that there is something new in music coming into existence, new sounds, new energy. Filmmakers took over my loft. I was sleeping under my moviola, and they took over. Every night they were projecting the new footage. Everybody came, and for months and months. And then one day, somebody said, "Today is Andy's birthday. Come and meet Andy. Come, and Andy will be there." So Andy will be there. So you know Andy. I just said, "I don't know Andy." So you don't know Andy? He has been watching movies in your loft for months, sitting there on the floor, and you don't know Andy? I don't know. All kinds of people come, to my loft. I don't know who Andy is. Of course, I went and I met Andy, and then I recognized this guy was sitting on the floor and watching all those movies by Ron Rice and Jack Smith, and this footage that was just taken the day before, and he was there. That was his schooling. That was his learning. And then he decided one day that he will make movies also, because he became friends with all the filmmakers showing their footage there, and then that was his beginning. And I was running a Gramercy, 28th Street Gramercy Arts film screenings I had at the Gramercy Arts Theater between Park and Lexington and 28th. And he comes one day and says, "Here, you want to, you can have a newsreel in front. At the beginning of every program, I will bring you a little short film, like 2 minutes and 45, but project slow speed." And that was this series of Kisses. So that was in 63, 64, somewhere there. And then later, he came with The Sleep, which premiered there, and I tied. Everybody said that nobody will stay for 6 hours, so I got a rope and I tied Andy to the chair. And later, I had seen the film before, and I can come back an hour later. He escaped. You see, and this, the factory was like a huge psychiatrist's couch in which everybody from everywhere came, all the lost and sad souls, and some very normal people, but mostly those who were semi-lost came in, and he was always, he said, yes, okay, yes, yes, yes. He was like a good father who never said no. So everybody liked, everybody felt very good there because you could say and do anything. And he said, yes, good, good, because that was Andy. And that, so that I think he saved, we know, in the newspapers you read that, some jumped from the roofs, and but that they would have jumped from the roofs anyway. But I think that he saved, helped a lot of people. He was a psychiatrist in a way. So that it was a kitchen in which brew, everybody was allowed to express themselves and do, so many things were born there, came into existence because of this very permissive atmosphere. It was quite amazing. Andy began with silent films, like ran for a long time, in time, very slow, not moved, but then he went into the sound. And when he went into the sound, he had scenes, all those lost, desperate souls in the factory. He put them in front of the camera and now do whatever you want, what are situations there. What happened is that, like every, I wrote in The Voice, in the Village Voice at that time, that everybody says that, and even I wrote that in 20 years, everybody will be making films like this. Because so easy, just put people, the camera runs by itself and it goes for hours, and portraits of films. It did not happen. It did not happen. And why? Because Andy recorded there a world that is not like any other. And those films are like anthropological documents today of a certain sensibility. And they cannot be repeated, cannot be recreated, cannot be repeated. Same as Eisenstein's films cannot be repeated, recreated by somebody else, or Hitchcock's, or any great filmmaker. Because it's a very specific, closed, almost reality. It's like a document, a slice of a period. And that's where, you can watch those people there, conversations, clashings, and that's where, it was the world that Lew and all, I also fit, like somehow, they were, he was friends with everybody there. And later, when it moved to Kansas City? What was it called? Max's. Yes. And Lew was there, but he was like on the side. Lew was never really in the middle, like at Max Kansas City. He was very often on the side there, and very brooding. I spent many hours with him, but we did not have really much conversations because I'm a silent person and she's a silent, brooding person. I'm a shy, he's brooding, and so I cannot tell much about what we discussed. But he was always there. He was always there.
The screen test that Andy did, which we're going to use some of them in the film. Can you set the context for that? Was anyone else doing that, or just tell us how important those are today? Or
the screen tests, the series of screen tests, which I think goes into like 400 or something like that, are incredible documents. You walked into the factory, and the camera is there, the Bolex is there, motorized Bolex that ran for 2 minutes 45 seconds. And usually the lineage or Gerard Malanga was there which is a chair, set and look and do whatever you want, stare, and the camera runs for 2 hours, 2 minutes 45 seconds. And later, of course, the instructions from Andy was always to project them slower speed, so it runs about 3.5 minutes. Instead of naturalistic speed, 24 frames per second, it runs much slower, which then destroys the naturalism. It then puts it on a completely different plane, out of the real context. It becomes a portrait. Those 400, they are still haven't been seen, exhibited, but I think it's a very unique treasury of the various personalities, not only artists, anybody who was passing the town, coming to interview, or there are many students, admirers coming, so just, and portraits were taken. It's terrific.
Jonas, did you do a screen test?
Yes,
Can you tell us about yours, and you have it?
No, I mean, all the, there was a book that Gerard Malanga prepared, and in that book, maybe there are about 50 or 60 portraits, so you can see that is one frame taken from the film. And you can see my frame, because usually that one frame represents quite truly what is in the rest, because people did not move much around. So what you see in one frame, more or less, the expression changes. Some get impatient, some begin to react to the camera. Yes, the portrait was taken of me also, but all the portraits are now with the Warhol Museum. Some are with Malanga, I understand.
Okay. Any other question that we need covered? I think it's great.
Anything? I can answer any question that you have.
You did wonderfully. I would like to do...
Do you know Lou's music to a certain extent, and that you could talk? People have said that it has a rather cinematic quality to it, that it plays out almost as a novel or a film might.
I think that if one would say that, I have used some of Velvet Underground music as background for some of my films. Now, it's very easy to use it because the music, at least some of the early music, and even the later, it goes like on a certain plane against which, makes a background against which then you can put any images you want. With the occasional changes on some exciting little moments that creates the rhythm, which again goes with, it goes very well with, not with narrative films, but with any series of non-narrative disconnected images. That is why at the Dome, Andy was always there at the Dome in the back upstairs with 3-4 projectors, throwing different images, and they all went very well with that music. That music somehow tied them all, those images together.
What attracted Andy to film?
It's like this. I had a loft at 414 Park Avenue South. That's where Filmmakers Cooperative was. And we screened. Now, I have to say something about Barbara Rubin, because Barbara Rubin's name usually is like neglected in reviews of the 60s. That she was one of the seminal figures. Actually, it was Barbara Rubin who introduced me to Velvet Underground, to Lou Reed. It was Barbara Rubin who introduced Lou and Velvet Underground later to Andy Warhol. And Barbara Rubin was behind everything that was taking place during that period. She was very much with it, very much in music, very much excited, and like a mother of everything, always trying to help and push. That included, Dylan. She practically was the nurse, Dylan's nurse after the motorcycle, crash, and Dylan, of course, acknowledges that. So it was very active, and I was running I moved from Lafayette to 41st Street in the middle of Times Square, practically between 6th Avenue and 7th Avenue. And that's where I ran films, and that's where Barbara Rubin brought Lou and the group, and they were sort of experimenting, fooling around, sometimes a background to some films, and sometimes just playing there. That is where they're trying out, like period before the appearance at the Dome took place. And that's where Andy, Barbara Rubin brought Andy, said, you have to see them, you have to listen to them. And she introduced Andy to Lou and to the group.
And the Velvets actually performed background music for films at the Cinematheque in '65 for
yes, they play
Pellicer and Jack Smith, Ron Rice, Warhol, Rubin, Stan Brakhage. Is that right?
Right, because Barbara Rubin organized a series of screenings where she projected very often film one film on top of another film, and with music in the background. And the place, of course, was called Filmmakers Cinematheque. Yes, Jack Smith was there, and Andy was there, and Ron Rice, and Piero Helitzer. A lot of films were that we are recognized now as classics, sort of had their first presentations with very excited audience seeing something for the first time. I mean, I have used some of Velvet Underground music as background for some of my films. Now, it's very easy to use it because the music, at least some of the early music, and even the later, it goes like on a certain plane against which, makes a background against which then you can put any images you want. With the occasional changes on some exciting little moments that creates the rhythm, which again goes with it goes very well with not with narrative films, but with any series of non-narrative disconnected images. That is why at the Dome, Andy was always there at the Dome in the back upstairs with 3-4 projectors, throwing different images, and they all went very well with that music. That music somehow tied them all, those images together.
Do you remember the psychiatrist convention?
Yes, very much. I was the one who introduced Andy and Velvet Underground.
Start over and tell us about the psychiatrist convention.
I don't know how it came up, but it was the first sort of public appearance of, that's how it's taken, of Velvet Underground. And it was at the yearly psychiatrist convention, which was somewhere in the I think Park Avenue or Madison in the 45th Street, somewhere, some big hotel. There were like, I don't know, 400, 500 psychiatrists there. And they needed something special, and I don't know whose idea it was. They said, okay, Andy, and let him bring his friends and music. And they decided to do that. And Andy asked me to introduce him and Velvet Underground, and I did. There is some pictures of it. I filmed a little bit of that occasion. And they did. They of course, performed, and Belanga was starting there, and Edie, and everybody was very excited. For the head of the convention was beaming. There is a picture with Andy, and sort of very happy about the occasion.
It was reviewed very unfavorably, I think, right?
In the social column.
Yes,
The review was terrible.
Another example.
Yes.
But are you saying that people there enjoyed it?
Yes, they were talking loud, and they enjoyed it. But I think for the the press was there, or the press was already following Andy and the activities quite closely. And one of the reasons was that we refused at that time. Now, if the press, a newspaper, magazine calls, everybody is very cooperative. We were not cooperative. For myself, the filmmakers cooperative, Cinematheque, if Time or Life magazine calls and wanted to see something, that you have to pay. You have to pay. We are not cooperating. And that excited them very much. So in any case, they were there, and I guess they were not used yet to the music. They thought the situation, psychiatrists, and this strange music here. I don't remember, maybe I read those columns, but I don't remember what they said, the columnists. But it was an exciting period. So many things happened there. And we did not take any of it seriously. We just did, and we did not document it because it's life. We are just doing it. If we would have known that it will be so much known later, and everybody will be making television, programs about it, we would have documented it and footage of it. But it was life. It was life, and you don't think that when you live, you don't. Record, you don't document real life. You just live it. So we lived